us. He is one of the, he's the head valuer. So he will be joining us in a second. In the meantime, thank you everybody for joining us this morning. Sihle, thank you so much for the time that you've put aside to go through the rates processes. I know that there's a lot of questions and a lot of people just wanting clarity on the best way forward and how to effectively object where we need to. And also just to clear up some issues that people have had. If you're ready to go, Sihle, you are welcome.
Thank you. I'm just trying to invite in my team and I'm failing since I'm not the organizer. If you could just invite them into the meeting for me, then we can get on our way, please.
I have forwarded Pete your the invites. Is there anyone else you'd like me to invite?
Please invite Veli Sope as well. If you can type in their email address and press the invite button, they should then automatically come through.
Okay, I got Veli. He's done.
Okay, is he in that meeting?
Let me just, I'm sending it update now. Okay, you should get it now.
Okay, perfect. But in the meantime, we can start. I'm hoping that I will be okay until they get in.
Okay.
I'm assuming you're leading the discussion, Angela?
Yes.
Thank you.
The first big question that has come up from a lot of our members is the actual process around. Everyone has now done their objections. A lot of people have not received any feedback at all. Some people have received feedback. They've received automatic responses stating, we have accepted your objection and there's a more than 10% change in the valuation. So now you will automatically be sent through to get the valuation done automatically. So I suppose that's one of the things that has come up. The other thing that's also come up is in situations where people haven't heard anything. I personally did my objection and I haven't received any response at all. So I guess the first step would be, what is the process now, and what do we need to do as building owners to get our values correctly, or our properties correctly valued? What is the process? What do we need to do?
Okay, so the city received about, good morning once again. The city received about 40,000 objections across the board, be it business, residential, and so on. So as we got those, we started working on them. The city has finalized just over 20,000. You excuse me, I just came back from leave today and I haven't gone into the system to look at where we are standing, but I know that we've finalized 20,000 objections. We have since mailed them. Now, from a mailing perspective, you will well appreciate the fact that SAPO is in some kind of a challenge. So what we are doing is we're mailing the statements in batches, and our batches are at about 2,000 to 3,000 per day. So those are the batches that we are mailing, and we finished mailing about 20,000 of those. There is still a balance of about 20,000 objections that we need to go through with the valuers. As they finish those, we will continue posting, emailing them to the addresses that you put on your objection files or objection documents. We'll continue emailing those. Now, on the issue of the 20,000 that is outstanding, our targeted date of completion is the 30th of September 2023. So by the 30th of September, we should have finished emailing, finalizing all the objections. It will take us a few other days after the 30th of September to actually email them out because of the batch work that we are doing. Unfortunately, our system is not able to carry, say, the 20,000. Once it's done, we can't email it all out on the same in the same batch because of the challenges that we have, obviously, from a bulk email point of view. So the city is also working on that to find a better way of emailing, but that's what we're doing in the meantime. So we've got another 20,000 that we're still looking at. So where you get a letter, and in the letter, they say to you, your value has changed over 10%, that is in the act. Once the value of the property changes, or there's a variance of 10% on the value that we originally had in the valuation roll and the value that we have now as an MVD, the municipal valuer's decision after the objection, then it goes into an automatic review process. That is a requirement from the MPRA point of view. So once it goes into the review process, there then is an appeal board that then needs to look at that number again. Now, when it goes into the review process, there's an independent board that is appointed by COCTA. There's a legal mind in there, a valuer mind, or two valuer minds in there that sit and look at this review. Once they look at the review, they have the ability to further increase it, further reduce it, or further maintain the value. Now, in this process, the owner of the process is not invited. Unfortunately, that's what the act says, and the owner is not invited. So they could move the property value that you most probably would have been happy with because you didn't want to appeal or you chose not to appeal. So meaning that you would have been happy with that value. But because they've got the review process aligned to themselves, then they would then do those movements. Most of the time we request our clients to do an appeal if there's a variance in the value of 10%, so that you are present when they look at that value again to reconfirm, so that if they want to increase it, you are there to argue your point. Or if they want to decrease it, obviously you won't argue anything, I assume. But if they want to increase it, you'd then argue and say, I'm the owner and this is the process, so that they're able to hear the other side of the coin as well before they increase the value. So that process, unfortunately, we are waiting for the boards to be appointed. As soon as the boards are appointed, which is an independent process as well, they will come into the city. We'll have an induction with them. Once we do the induction, then they through the admin team that we have, which acts as their secretariat, then schedule the times when they want to sit and when they want to listen to the matters. Unfortunately, the city in that space has got no control. We go as per their diaries. We have tried to talk to COCTA to say, can we have retired attorneys, retired judges, for lack of a better word, so that those, you will know that they'll dedicate more time to the city, because our numbers usually are very high. And it's better to have somebody who's got almost no other job but to listen to the city and finalize their appeals on the objection, the appeals and reviews. I'll stop there and take some more questions. I'm hoping Pete is in the meeting so that he can assist me as well, and Veli. So yeah, I think I've tried to clear that one. Can we maybe go through to the other issues that I have not cleared? There's a query that has been put on the chat. 5%, we were asked to email the valuations department with various documents, no form. Is the original objection still in place? So if the valuer asked you for additional information, it's because they are reviewing your property value and they needed more information to be able to make a decision. So our external valuer has valued the property at 1/3 of the valuation. Okay, on that one, on the external value, as long as he did the valuation on the 1st of July 2022 as the valuation date. So the city of Joburg has to have one valuation date where the market conditions on that date are the ones used across all properties. So if the valuer that you've got, who is external, has taken the 1st of July 2022 as the valuation date and given you the value, and that's the value that you are saying is 3 times the value that the city has, then that information should be brought to the valuers. Then they will decide. Obviously, they won't take exactly the value. They will do their own exercise, and then they'll get back to you on that one. The current rates, now, I'm not sure. Okay, exceed our income. How do we fund the difference? Okay, so I think it's very important to understand that the valuation roll and the tax the tariffing component are two different sets of information. The valuer values what he sees. Now, I've got a lot of pensioners as well who are saying, you've overvalued me because I'm a pensioner, so I won't be able to pay. So the valuer values what he sees and puts a value to it. The rating component is totally independent of what the valuer does from a profession point of view. So there's a modeling component that happens with the tariffing, but the valuer values what he sees and not what your income is. If it's an income producing company or property, then you should give that income producing, the income information to the valuer so that they use it when they are doing their cap rates and all those issues. So there is ability to assist the client if you give us the information, and then they'll look at the valuations again from an objection point of view. So I'm hoping that when you talk about your income, it's the income as at the 1st of July 2022 that you are referring to, and I'm hoping that you did submit that to the valuers so that they can take into consideration that information. Pete, please come through and assist where I've missed something.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. Yeah, I just want to say the value, the act, let me start over. The act determines, we must determine the market value of a property. So, and if we look at business properties, we looked at income and expenses to the property that determines the value. But you do get properties. For example, if you've got a property and the owner is renting it out to a friend, his son, so his income, his leases or his income to that property might be low what market rentals will be in that area. Then the valuers will look at what's market in that area, and that will be used to determine the the value of the property. So the income gives us an idea, it's important, but we do look at market because we need to say what's the market value of that property. So yeah, you get properties that where the leases are negative, and then you get properties where the leases are positive. But the valuer needs to look at a market. That's why the Act comes and say, if there's an unregistered lease on a property, we should ignore it, but not ignore it to say, don't have a look at it. Is to say, look at it, and if it comprises of market rentals, that will give you an indication of the value then. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, Chair. Thank you.
So Sefle and Pete, just so obviously our market, the JPOMA market, is the affordable housing. So our rentals will not be as high as the normal conventional rental market. What we have found with a lot of our properties is the valuations have been done. The rates and the value have gone up by 300%, 400%, 500% in a market where the rentals are already very low. And we have an issue where a lot of our members are not able to afford the current rates, where they've gone maybe from 15,000 Rand a month to 50 or 60,000 Rand a month. Obviously, this severely impacts the affordability of this rental market. What can people do? What can landlords do in a situation where they just don't have that 50, 60, 70,000 Rand extra and they're already in a battling market?
If I can just come here on the rental. So if you talk affordable housing, that creates a market on its own. So you can't compare more upmarket rentals to that. So an area, a type of property creates a market, and within that market is where the valuer needs to go. And that's why it's important to say, here's the properties, here's the information that we've got on the properties, and one needs to look at it in that sense. So the valuer can't compare affordable properties to upper class properties and say this is a market rental. Obviously, every property falls within a certain market where it sits, the location of the property. If you've got for example, a type of development, a community development there, then that forms the market there and of the property. So that's what a valuer will look at in that sense. If they didn't know the properties, for example, and they just use rentals, that's why the value will be higher. But in the objection, if the information comes through, that should decrease the value of the property in that sense.
So Pete, what you're saying is that within our objections, we should be including rent rolls and things like that in order to help the valuers to make those decisions.
Yes, that should have been in your objection, because the valuer is now looking at what was submitted. So, and if you look at where they find, okay, it looks like we need additional information, they will request it from the client to say, listen, what you're writing here gives me an idea. I need more information on the property, maybe the market information specific to the property. And that's a clear indication that the valuer is already seeing he needs to look at something else or look at some more information before he can just finalize the objection. So yeah, if you didn't, then they would have, if the valuer look at it, he might have requested it if needed. But after this process, as Sigley indicated, there's also the appeal process. And if somebody is not, the act refers to, if the owner is not, sorry, I just want to get the correct wording there. Apologies, my book closed. So the act comes and say, a person has lodged an objection in terms of section 51C and who is not satisfied with the decision of the municipal valuer. That's a person who can appeal. So but then again, is to provide as much information as possible to the valuer, because when the valuer looks at a property and Sigley has indicated we had 40,000 plus objections. So for the valuer to finalize these objections, he can't just go out to each one and look at it. So he looks at the documentation supplied, and from there on he takes it. Do I need to go and see the property? Is the information that I've got sufficient to this objection? If there's additional objection from the client on the objection, he will look at that. So yeah, it's a process that happened. But to say if somebody is not satisfied with the outcome, there is an appeal process that takes it the next step further, where somebody independent will look at it. They will have the client or the appellant present. They will ask questions, or the appellant can explain why he feels the value is too high, or why he feels it should be a certain value, and they will listen and ask questions. The valuer will have to explain the same. How did he arrive at the value, all the information he used, and that will then be discussed. And the appeal board, they become then, sometimes we call them the super valuer, because they will look at all the information in front of them and make a decision. Then it becomes their decision of what the value, of what the outcome is in the appeal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pitt. And tell me, can we do appeals online, or do you prefer them to be done through the walk-in centre?
So there's not, with objections, we had 13 walk-in centres. With appeals, our administration deals with that. If you've lodged an objection, obviously you can't appeal if you didn't lodge an objection. If you lodge an objection, the online process are there for you to do it online. if not, our first floor in Braamfontein, Jorrison Place, first floor East Wing, that's where the administration people sit, and they will assist the people with appeals in that manner to lodge an appeal. They obviously go into the system and capture it, and if there's supporting documents, they will upload it into the system. But if you've objected online, you can go in and you will be able to lodge your appeal online as well. So it's a very much similar process.
Great, thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions come through on the chat. The first is from Justin. He wants to know, what do we do if we purchase a property today and the value is, say, less 50% than the current municipal value? That's the first question. And then followed on that, must we submit a Section 78 to have the property reevaluated? And if the property is reevaluated, will it be reevaluated from the time that we submit the Section 78?
Okay, if I just can come in, that's why a valuation roll's got a valuation date. So the valuation date was 1 July 2022. The market to value the properties of 1 July 2022 has been used. If we revalue a property, we must use the same market as July 2022. We cannot look at today, where after 1 July 2022, we had about 7, 8, 9, I don't know how many interest rates increases, which did affect the value of the property. So we can't compare today's value to 1 July 2022 and say this is the value that should be. We go back, we say this is the property, we go back to 1 July 22, we use that market to value the property. So the market information stays the same. So the value that, if the value was correct at 1 July 22, we will arrive at the same value again, unless there's certain factors that changed. But if you use today's market information, you will get a different answer, but we will not implement that value. So even if you put in a 78 query, we go back to 1 July 2022. So that's unfortunately, and for the life of the valuation roll, that will be the valuation date. We do not change that information. And the Acts prescribe that even if you, for example, got a vacant land and you build a house on it, we say if that house that's built today existed on 1 July 2022, what would the value be? And that market is used to determine the value. So okay. Yeah, to lodge an 78 query because of today's market, it's not going to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question that has come up quite regularly on my emails is, in the case where people are waiting for their values to be corrected, do they pay their current rate amounts that they're being billed, or can they pay what they think is the correct value?
Legislation is clear. It says even if you've lodged an objection or an appeal, you're still liable to pay the account. Unfortunately, that's legislated, so we can't change that. So that's what the Act says, and we've had court cases where the judge just came in there and said the Act is clear on that. Unfortunately, because there's a dispute on this, the clients are still liable to pay the accounts.
And in a situation where, say, the client doesn't actually have the money, say, go back to affordable housing, because that is our market, where we're in a situation where our bottom lines are already very thin, and now we have to pay 3 times more in rates, is there anything in place to assist landlords with this?
Unfortunately, from the city's side, the best advice that we can give is that payment arrangements be made. With, obviously, you would be noting that with the credit control team that you are making payment arrangements maybe for a longer period, so that then it reduces what you pay. And unfortunately, for the month that you make the arrangement, you have to pay the bill in full. There's nothing really from our side that we're able to do from a legislative point of view and from a policy point of view to assist until the objections and appeals are finalized. We sometimes, obviously, because we don't know the boards that are coming in and we have not yet built relations yet. Once the relations are built, sometimes like the old boards that we had, we could go to them and say, this is a special case, there's a problem because of these kinds of issues. Could you please set up a date where you look at all the properties that have got this problem, so that then the board has almost the same feel going through the day for those matters. But unfortunately, we don't know who the boards, which boards are coming, members, and we don't know how flexible they will be with us. So we just have to wait and see. But unfortunately, from a policy point of view, the city does not have anything that is in place to assist.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question here from Mark. He says, please can you recap on the following, read the process. Is the City of Johannesburg considering our objections lodged in May, or does the system require us to reapply?
So if you lodged an objection, I think a lot of our clients get confused between an objection and the Section 78. If you lodged an objection and you got an objection number, please do not lodge another. There's no way you can lodge another objection. You can lodge a 78, but please do not lodge a 78 until the objections are finalized by the municipal valuer and they give you an MVD. Once you get that, then you go on to appeal. Do not still lodge a 78, because then you're just clogging the system. Go on appeal if you are not happy with the decision of the municipal valuer. So those processes are different. And we always encourage our clients that once you start a certain process, don't jump off and go to another process, because then when you want to appeal and the appeal period is closed, we won't accept that appeal. So look out on the letter the MVD comes with. It will tell you when the appeal process is open and when it's closing. Please make sure that you use that period to then appeal the value of your property.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then Justin has a follow-up question. He says, how is it fair that council in general charged a higher value in the new valuation roll when property values have been falling, and then also charged an annual escalation on the percentage charged, therefore effectively charging a double increase? Sorry, scroll down. Shouldn't the percentage charge stay the same as the value of the property has increased? So I think this has got to do with the fact that the properties are increasing, and as well as the tariff itself has increased in percentage.
I think the clarity should be, we compiled the valuation roll. This valuation, so if there's a value and let's say it's correct and everything, will stand the same value until 30 June 2027. The value will not change. Annually, council adjusts its rates, the tariff. So the tariff might increase with 2%, 5%, or whatever council decides on. That's what increases. The value doesn't increase. So your rates payable increase because of the tariff increase, but not of the value increase. The value can only increase, or let's say the value can only increase if there's changes made to the property. For example, if somebody builds on, add additions, that will, because the characteristics of the property changes, that will then be revalued again with the market of July 2022, and a new value will be in place. But if nothing changes on the property, that value will stand from 1 July 2018 23 when we start billing, till 30 June 2027, when the new valuation roll will come into place 1 July 2027. So the values do not change or increase unless something specific happened to the property, but the tariffs might increase. Thank you.
So
Okay.
over and above what Peter's explained, there's over the years, there's been a challenge where people are saying the city is double dipping in the year that the valuation roll comes out. So if you look at the current valuation roll that came out, there's approximately 50,000 properties that maintained the same value they had in the previous valuation roll. There are about 135,000 properties that reduced in value, and there's about another 700,000 where the value increased with different percentages across the board. So when you look at that picture and then you talk double dipping, the conditions that the market is in, or the conditions that affect the value that is placed on a property, those are external conditions that the city of Joburg has got no control over. So double dipping only happens when the city has got total control on the value and on the tariffing. Then we can talk about double dipping. But if the conditions that the valuer uses to value a property, your interest rates, your conditions of your property, what they see on the ground, that has got, the city has got no control over that. So the notion of double dipping, we have discussed it at great length with National Treasury, with COCTA, and they seem to now be agreeing or understanding that there isn't any double dipping, so to speak. So the city then, if you remember the previous valuation roll, we went with a 0% increment. The National Treasury had given the city a 5.3 CPI increase for this financial year, and the city went with a 2% increase. So those things are done when we do the modeling and we look at the budget and what the requirements of the city are from a service delivery point of view. And I know a lot of people say you talk service delivery, but there's no service delivery happening. We raise the revenue as City Power, Joburg Water, rates and taxes, and pick it up. There are other components that do the service delivery leg. And I think we need, as the public, we need to be able to then approach the city and talk to service delivery with the necessary parties so that then we don't blame one component for the other components delay in the service delivery process. So I think the double dipping has been explained. We are more than happy to do a write-up, should you want one, that then talks into the detail of what happens in that space. Thank you.
Stikle, that would be great. If you could do a write-up for us, I think it'll definitely clear up everybody's misunderstanding and maybe understand the whole process a little bit better. Mark has said that as per the information that he's received, walk-ins at Jorrison Place are currently not being accepted. So you maybe just check with your team that side if they're not allowing people to come into the walk-in.
What are you coming to the walk-in to deliver? Maybe that's what we need to clear. Because if you're going to the walk-in to talk to an objection, they won't accept it, unfortunately. What are we talking about when we go to the walk-in? Maybe I need a bit more clarity before I approach the walk-in centers. Thank you.
Okay, Mark, if you could include that into the comments, I'll get down to that. Then we have another question here from Sean. Where does the city of Johannesburg think we must get the additional money from? There's a totally incorrect assumption that the money is just available, and this is tantamount to extortion by enforcing credit control on the draconian application of outdated laws which do not function in the current non-functioning environment. If the COJ was much more efficient, it would be much easier, but unfortunately, it would appear that it is extorting as much money from property owners as possible, which is not indicative of the relationship COJ says it wants to establish with business and landlords.
Okay, so I think from the act is a piece of legislation that we use as a city of Joburg, and compliance is monitored by COCTA. Okay, and if members of the public feel that the MPRA is outdated, it's important that you approach COCTA, because we just follow what is in the act. It's law, and unfortunately, we cannot break the law without having to approach the people who process or facilitate the amendment of the act. So unfortunately, there was an amendment that was done. Pete, if you can just remind me, and there were the comments that COGTA received were very few, and very few people made input into the amendments at that time. Should the general public want the act to be looked at and possibly amended, the best people to approach is COGTA. They are the people who hold us to ensure compliance with the act. So in as much as I feel and understand the frustration that the clientele is facing, unfortunately, the act prescribes certain things that we need to do, and we need to follow them. If there is need, if they do a regulation to amend or to guide further from a COGTA point of view, we will definitely use those regulations moving forward. For now, unfortunately, it's a bit difficult for us to digress from the act, because then the city and anybody would be found in contempt of not using the act that is in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just going through the comments here. Justin, follow up. He says yes, but in this goes back to the double dipping. Yes, but in the year one of the increase, there was property value increase and a tariff increase. I think this is where the confusion comes from, as like, for example, this year we're having a property value increase as well as a tariff increase. So it does feel like double dipping. So maybe in your document that you'll put together for us, you can make that a little bit clearer as to how that works.
All right, but then as I almost said colleagues, as clients to the city of Joburg, I've described to you the different classes of property movement that happened. So those who reduced in value, there's no you are, from your understanding, there's no double dipping. If we did not do the increase in a tariff, because I think we need to be clear that the tariff increase is a different component compared to the value increase. And if we look at them together, what are we saying about the people whose values were maintained? What are we saying about the people whose values went down? And obviously, from a tariffing point of view, that's why I said the tariffs on a year-to-year basis, National Treasury gives us guidance on the CPI that the city should use. So I think this discussion on in the year of implementing a general valuation rule, what should happen, we need to look at it deeper and with greater insight of what happens in that financial year. I remember one of the IPTI meetings, and Pete needs to come in here, where we went to an IPTI meeting and we discussed this issue of increments in the year when the valuation role comes through. And there were a lot of countries that said, we do valuation rolls every year and we increase the rates on a yearly basis. So there are countries that are doing two of these things at the same rate, at the same time, on a year-to-year basis. But from a city's point of view, you do the valuation roll every 5 years. So every 5 years, you have a code period for 5 years where the same value is used and the tariff is increased year on year, meaning that if we had to do valuations, obviously we don't have the capacity, but if we had to do valuations on a year-to-year basis, how then would you then expect the city then not to increase the values and just do a valuation roll on a year-to-year basis? And I think we should have intimate, serious discussions with these things, because at the point where the city gets a valuation team that is large enough to be able to value the properties, we are going to definitely move from the 5 year to 4 years. And our target, as council instructed, is that we should at least be every 2 years. So when we get to that point, we really have to have a discussion with ourselves from a budgeting point of view and with the political heads to say, how does this now start to play out? Because even if I said one thing, like I did modeling for all the percentages from 0 right through to 5.3 as instructed by National Treasury. And we looked at what we needed from a budget point of view, from a service delivery point of view, and looking at the modeling and all that. That's how they ended up at 2%, because then we have other budget forums that then go through this process. And that's how they ended up at 2%. So these discussions, I think, yes, it's good to have them with the rates and taxes and the valuations team, but we need to open it much wider, to bring in the budget team, to bring in the political heads, to bring in group finance as group finance in its totality, so that then the clientele is able to explain their pain points to everybody, and we all have the same understanding of what those pain points are. Thank you, Chair.
I'm gonna jump around the questions a little bit, because this one relates to exactly what we are talking about. It's from Justin again. He'd like to know, given the double dipping debate, how many properties valued over 20 million went down in value? We guess that the only properties that went down in value were very low valued properties anyway. It would be interesting to know what the stats are on this. So, Sihle, in your experiences so far in this valuation role, have any properties gone down in value?
Yes, they have. Even from a business point of view, there are some properties that have gone down in value.
Okay.
If you want the detail, I would need to go into the files and look at them, because when we did the exercise, as I said, we only looked at how many have dropped in value, how many have maintained, and how many have increased. So if I need to go back, I would then need to go back and say, can I get all the an extraction of all the properties that were above 20 million in GV 2018 and see what has happened subsequent to that. It's doable, but I don't have the numbers right now.
Okay, it would be very interesting to see those numbers. I think it'll also put everyone's mind at ease that it's not just properties going up, because that's obviously what we've experienced. Then I have Sean again. He says, Sihle, if you and your team are aware that the system is not working for all, why do we not work together with the private sector organizations to amend this and alleviate all these necessary headaches? FYI, we are not interested in what other countries are doing. We're in South Africa and the economy is already tough, and these increases are putting undue pressure on those who can ill afford it.
When we say systems, which systems are we talking about? Because I talked about COCTA, I talked about National Treasury, and I talked about the internal process. When you talk about private sector, when we started with the valuation process, when Pete and his team started compiling the valuation roll, I remember Pete sent out letters to over 40, Pete, if you can remind me, over 40 businesses requesting that they give us information on their properties so that we can then use that as because obviously when the valuers are valuing, they're valuing in trenches. So we sent the first 40 high-end, high-valued properties to say, give us your information so that we can use this information to then value the properties. We even sent a letter to SAPOA to say, could you please assist us and get the companies that are members to SAPOA to please give us information that we can use to value their properties. I think we got very low feedback. If I say 5% response, that would be amazing. We didn't get any response at all. So in as much as the city tries to do certain work, and the Act allows us to ask for this information, people are non-responsive. They only respond even when we issue letters to say these are the values when we do the valuation roll and we publish it and we send out notices. It's still very quiet. We only start hearing the challenge after the first bill in July, when the objection process has already closed. So we need, yes, I agree that we need to work together, but we need to work together aligned to what the MPRA says we should do. And the MPRA provides, we open the valuation roll for 80 days, the objection period for 80 days. We only had an influx at the beginning and at the end. It was a dead period in the middle. So I'm not sure what we should do as the city to improve the work that we do without necessarily the organizations out there assisting us as well. Because we can open it for 100 days, but if you don't come and object, then the 100 days, we have people in those centers waiting for you. You don't come through. We send out letters to say, please give us the information so that we can value correctly. We don't get the information. So it's a give and take. We need to be in this together. I totally agree. How then do we get the people to come to us and give us the information prior when we ask? I think it's a section 42 that says we can do that. We get the information, then we value correctly. Because obviously the valuers won't go and inspect each of the 900,000 properties we have in the city. So it has to be a collaboration. Thank you. Pete, I think you can come in here. I'm not sure how many notices we sent out and how many people responded.
We identified the business properties and we sent out to all the business properties we identified at that stage. But yeah, the response was very low. I just see there's a comment to say using of private companies. Irrespective of who's used, the Act says we must determine the market value as at the date. If you use a municipal valuer, if you use a private valuer, the results should be similar. If the value increased over the 5 years, it will show. I can just say that the previous valuation roll of 2018 was done by a private company. From 2013 roll to 2018, there was about a 30% increase in the values of the property because it was a more upmarket. But yeah, there was an increase. Doesn't matter who do the valuation roll. If we've got to implement the Act, it says the market value as at a specific date, and that's it. And that's where the objection process comes in. 2018, we had 55,000 objections compared to now just over 40,000. I think it's closer to 42,000 objections that we've got. But the process is still the same. We need to determine the market value as at the date. If that market value shows an increase, it's an increase in the value. So I know most people talk about the increase in what they pay, because that's an effect. And unfortunately, in July, you get the increases because it's the beginning of the financial year. You get the increases of electricity, water, pick it up, sewer, all of those, plus assessment rates. So yes, it's a 1 month where all increases together increase the bill substantially or increase the bill, if I can say that. But yeah, if we use whoever, if the values increase, the values increased. If the values declined, it declined. But that's what we need to determine, and that's where the processes are for objections to appeals. And if you're not satisfied with the appeal board, you can even take them to High Court. But that's the process, and I think the provisions of the Act is to say, yes, with 940,000 properties, there will be errors. Not there might be, there will be errors. And this process is to try and catch those errors. So yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pet. I'm just going to run through some of the things that have come up in the comments. Risa said that, with the current state of the post office, all communication should be done via email. I'm sure that you are on the process of moving that over. I don't even know the last time I looked in my post box. I think the assumption is that everything should be moving over to digital. And on that note, I also want to, I want to say as well that over this process of objections, we've picked up quite a few errors or issues with the online objections. And I can tell you from my side that every time I have emailed CK with issues on the online system, her IT her IT team have been very quick to fix those. I'm sure some of you, as you were objecting, you might have come across some issues on the website which were fixed pretty quickly. I can tell you that that was done through Sihle and her team. As we picked up the errors, her team fixed them up immediately. So I do want to give credit where it's due, because it's not easy to have 40,000 objections online, and the system handled it. And when it did crash, it was up pretty quickly. So I do want to just make comments of that. The other thing, I'm just going to scroll down here. Sean says the last 2 GRVs have been a disaster. This is a broken system. Also important to note that SAPOA doesn't represent the residential market. They are only representing the commercial market, whereas we represent the residential market. And I think a lot of our evaluations are a lot more complex than the commercial properties. Sean also says comms need to be better. You can send to JPOMA to distribute as well. Sihle and I have been working together for 8 years now, and I can say that very comfortably that the communication between the rates department and JPOMA is very strong. We have tried to work with the rates department in every aspect. When they came to us requesting information, we've sent that out. This is our second webinar with Sihle and her team. So there is a willingness and a desire to work together, but definitely we can be better. And wherever we can as JPOMA members help and make this as easy for everyone else as possible. I know that Sihle and her team are on, they have the same kind of commitment when it comes to JPOMA members. But I think the big takeaway for us is from the session is, first of all, some supporting documents are very important when you are doing your objections. We can work, these processes can be done a lot smoother through communication and working together. Excuse me. And we will continue to work on this relationship and work together as much as possible. Are there any other comments or questions with regard to the rates processes?
Can I just, Angela, if you may allow me to talk to the post office issue that was raised. So
Yes,
the
please.
city of Joburg, we have been in communication with the post office. I'm sure everybody knows what's going on in the post office space. So when we did the extension to 80 days on the objection process, it was duly because of the challenges that we have with the post office. And the act again is clear. It says I should send notices by mail. Okay, so I would have loved to send everything by email and everything, but I had to still send by post. Even if I knew it's a failing system, I needed to use it because I was going to be seen to be non-compliant. Then I used emails where emails are available on the system. So I think from our side as well, if we can just plead that everybody who's able to register to get your statements on email, because when we send out the notices, we go into that space, pick up the emails that we find there to augment the posting. So the posting, I've got no choice. I still need to post, even if I know it might not get anywhere. I need to post. That's what the law says. But I then augment with the emails. So if the members of the general public can just update their emails on the city's side, even if you send them to me and tell me, Sihle, here are the account numbers, link this email address, I'll most gladly send it through to the team that does email addresses and link as such. Then it assists me when I am then posting any kind of notice from a valuation point of view to then post correctly. In the last GVs that we've done, we've always had external valuers contracted to value for the city of Joburg. And when we decided that we are going to do it in-house, it's because we wanted to retain the knowledge. We wanted to own the process. And we wanted to be able to say, let's capacitate the city and let's make sure that whatever happens, we take accountability. And when the contractor walks away, we we always had a challenge of not knowing what they've put on the system and what they've taken away without giving us the paperwork for it. So when we do it with ourselves, we have control. We can account and. But that does not say that we won't make mistakes. That one is a given. When you work with such big numbers, there will be errors here and there. All I ask is, please give us time. We are in the process of building a team. We are in the process of making sure that the online system works. And there is a team that is now dedicated within our team that now looks at the IT and improving the IT base that we have. So with time, we'll perfect our act. But even if we do, valuations is very challenging. And it's not a perfect science, as we all know. So there will always be those outliers and things that happen in that space that we still need to account for. And if the need comes, once the objections come through, we need to fix those in that manner. I thought that I should just clear those issues. And on the issues of communicating, I've gone to the national papers, I've done radio stations, I've done emails, I've done Twitter, I've done all those. And when we say communicate better, what is my client looking for? Tell me what you're looking for. If I'm able to do it, I will do it. But you need to be able to tell me exactly what you want. Because I thought if I do Facebook, I do Twitter, I do emails, I do newspapers, and I think we had interviews as well. Pete has done a couple of interviews on TV channels and all those. With all that done, I'm saying, what else can we do? If we can do it, we'll come to the party and do it as well. Thank you.
Sihle, thank you so much. I've got three last quick comments just to go through. The first is, and I think we have discussed this before, what do we do in the process? What do we do in the situation where, as Cafius has put in the comment, his property value, the description of the property has changed from multi-purpose to industrial and obviously increased the value. What is the best way to deal with properties where your property description has changed?
If I can,
okay,
thank you. Just coming here, the property description relates to the category of the property. Now, multi-purpose refers to a property used for more than one purpose. For example, residential and business use on the property. In those cases, we split the value between the residential component and the business component, and they are rated based on the category for each component in that valuation. So the business part will be rated business tariffs, and the residential part residential tariffs. If the category changes from multi-purpose to industrial, it means the property is zoned industrial, and the valuer said there's only one type of use on the property, which is a business type of use on that. So the industrial tariff is the same as business tariff. The Act came and we had to implement on 1 July, where they say these are the categories you must use. So they say if a property they've got industrial, they've got business and commercial, they've got residential categories that they said this is the type we must use. So we implemented that. So quite a few properties went from business and commercial to industrial because your zoning is industrial. And we also had, for example, we called property sectional title residential. Those moved to residential alone. So we do not make a difference in the valuation role between a sectional title residential property and a normal residential property, although the tariff are the same for both. So there's no financial implication in moving those categories. So yeah, but if it moved from multiple purpose to industrial, it meant that previously there was it was said there's a more than one use on the property. And now they indicated the value said no, there's only one use. It's a business use on the property, and that's why it's categorized according to its zoning. I think that's for various categories that came in. For example, we had previously a category of farming that moved to agricultural because the Act defines do not refer to farming anymore. Your sectional title business properties became business and commercial. Education category fell away. So we've got public service purposes, which are government-owned properties that are used for public services, like your public schools, your police stations, your hospitals, all those type of properties move to a public service purpose. Your education properties owned by private companies move to business and commercial. So that's the various categories that came in this aspect. Thank you, Chair.
Pete, how do we fix it? Because obviously, if the property has, maybe it was zoned industrial and it was an industrial building, but obviously with the shortage of housing, a lot of these properties have been converted into residential properties, and it seems a bit unfair that we should be paying the higher tariff based when the usage is so specific.
So if the property, if the residential component is a legal use of the property, it's part of the zoning of the property that it can be used as a residential, then there's the application process that must follow. Although we will categorize it industrial, if the owner applies to the city for the residential threshold tariff and that, and then the application will be investigated or considered, and then although the zoning will show industrial, in the billing system, the residential tariff will be applied, and the rebates according to that will also be applicable. So that's where the application process comes in.
Okay, perfect. So that's important, and obviously very important to note that your tariff will be implemented at the date of application. So the sooner you get those applications in, the better. Don't wait. Then just Sean has said in closing, we thank the COJ team for affording us the opportunity to vent some of our frustrations and to engage on this topic. It is much appreciated, noting that there are plans to move forward forwards in improvements in a positive indicator. Thank you. And then two last things quickly. Can the attendance of the appeals board be done via Zoom, Teams, and not in person? That's the first question. And then the second is just an update on the walk-in center. The walk-ins not allowed for the whole GVR objection process, but we're doing it online anyway. So that's just so that you know that they're not allowing GVR walk-ins at Jarrison Street. And then maybe if you could just tell us about the appeals board.
Yeah, so the appeals board, the decision is the appeals board's decision. The current one, the current one that was there, they did it via Zoom Teams. So, but it's their decision. I think it makes it more easier and comfortable for the people to do it on Teams. And the presentations are there. So the boards that were in place, COVID forced us to move in a different direction, but it's up to the board to decide on it. Certain matters, they might decide they want to do a face-to-face, but others they might decide on it. So when we do the induction to the boards that's going to be appointed, we will obviously discuss that with them to see what is the most comfortable way to do it. The only problem with Teams and Zoom is load shedding, because then you lose connectivity. It creates a bit of a challenge, but I think we find from the city side, we've got ways getting around those up to now. So, but for the owners, it might be a problem if the power goes off at his house, and especially if he uses a desktop, Obviously, if it doesn't have additional or additional sources of power, it creates problems, but I think the boards do deal with that. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So just a quick recap. First of all, when you please do not put in your appeals until your objection has been finalized. Otherwise, you're going to block the system. So those letters, I see some have started coming through. So please look out for those. Once you've received your finalization of your objection, you can appeal using a Section 78. Do not do the Section 78 until you've received your finalized objection. 10% increase or decrease in the value will mean an automatic review. So maybe Pete, if you can just confirm, if you get a letter that says that you're going to go into an automatic review, do you then still do the Section 78?
No, if I can just say Section 78, the Act comes up and say where properties has changed for various reasons. For example, a subdivision, a consolidating, it refers to where the value has increased substantially. That's where somebody added onto the property or build a house on the property or develop the property if it's a business property. And then it comes to say where a property has been valued incorrectly. But if you follow the objection process and the valuer says, I keep the value the same, and you send me a Section 78 query, you're not going to get a different answer because we call it a legal process. The legal process is the GV is open for inspection. Somebody objects, somebody can appeal. If that doesn't satisfy the person, he can go to High Court. If that legal process is being followed, then you are being advised and helped. If you did not object, for example, and that's where the 78 process comes in. So you, for some or other reason, you missed the objection period. That's when you can put in a 78 query because we haven't looked at your property before. And that's where it will be considered. It should just be noted. We're first attending to all the objections before we're going to attend to the 78 queries. So a 78 query is not jumping the line. So if you objected, we do match the objections and the 78 queries. And if you've objected, we're not going to consider a 78 query unless there's a reason to say, I've added additions to the property, or I demolished the property. My property needs to be revalued because the property changed, the attributes on the property changed. And that's where the 78 comes in. If you objected, that's it. You're following the legal process, and it runs up to a point. Yeah, so please do not put in a 78 query just because you're not happy with the outcome of the objection. We're gonna write to you and to say you did object, you objected, you had a result. We're not considering the 78 query. It's not a second bite at the apple, as we say. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Pete. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. I don't know if there's any other questions or comments. We're 20 minutes over, so I do appreciate Sihle and Pete for giving us extra time. And if anybody if you want your email address updated with the city, please send that through to me with your account numbers and what email address you want attached to those account numbers so that we can make sure you get all the emails that you need. And if you have any queries, please send them through to me and Sihle and her team will be able to assist. Okay, thank you, everybody, and have a fantastic day. Sihle, Pete, thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Keep well. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.